find us?
Oh, I'm on meetup.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And have you been to gatherings like this before?
No,
Aha, it's your first time.
First
But you're
time.
coming from an Indian background.
I am indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is your family tradition?
So they, from a what perspective? From a religious perspective, they follow the Lord Ayyappa.
Lord
Ayyappa.
Ayyappa. Aha. Oh, I'm not familiar with Ayyappa.
Ayyappa is an incarnation of Krishna.
Aha.
Yeah, he's so the main deity is the Sabarimala, if you've heard of that, in Kerala.
Uh-huh.
If you have heard of Kerala,
Yes,
you know Kerala, of course,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. But my family's deity is a version of Ayyappa,
Uh-huh.
based somewhat. I mean, and there is a temple with that.
So you're from South India.
South, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The South Indians I've always found to be very pious people.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Think so?
Yes. The ones that I've met.
Okay, yeah. Where are you from?
Well, from everywhere. I was born in USA, but my family traveled a lot. I lived in England for some years, lived in India, in Bengal for some years.
She lived 10 years in India.
In India?
In Bengal.
Okay, okay.
Well, I'm
Bengal.
Vishakha. This is Shakshi
Sakshi, okay.
and
Nice to meet
Ramananda.
you. Ramananda, he told me. Yeah. Where are you from, Chef?
I'm originally from the Netherlands.
Netherlands, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. And yourself, Raman? Oh, he says something.
Latvia. Oh, I think we're live. Are we
Okay.
live?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit more comfortable if you sit on the chair.
Oh yeah. Should we start again, maybe? That might be easier, right?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. So I need to be in the... Can I swap places?
Of course, yeah, of course, yeah.
We do live recording of all of us. We have a
Oh, see, okay.
small physical audience
take
and a
this?
large online audience.
Uh-huh. I didn't know about the online option. I'll try that next time.
Oh no,
No, please
we
come.
need some physical
Yeah.
presence.
We have already 6 people.
Oh really?
You live here in the neighborhood? Or?
Not in the very near Slough, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
But to learn about the jewels in life, then no place is too far actually.
No, of course, yeah.
It's very...
That is a little far though, by Slough, huh? That's pretty impressive. You drove all that way.
Nice. It's like half an hour.
Okay.
very nice.
Right.
Okay, so we are continuing with our reading and discussion of Srimad Bhagavad-gita.
We all read with you?
Oh, that's right. We don't have our screen today.
Then we do old times.
No, it's nice to have everyone has a call. They're not here, huh? Okay.
Shall I have a look?
We're very mixed up because we've shifted from our normal temple space.
We're painting the temple and so
Oh,
this is...
I saw them.
Yeah.
Temple room is bigger, much bigger.
And we normally set up a screen so everybody can easily follow the verses. Okay, so we are hearing the verses from our Gurudev. This is our Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Sundar Govindadev Goswami Maharaj, because he's able to, of course, he's able to pronounce the verses perfectly, which we're not able to do, but also he's chanting the verses with great spiritual potency. So we're praying that will enter our hearts, because we don't want this to just be an intellectual exercise. But, this is the divine song which has come, the divine message which has come from Lord Krishna's heart for the benefit, upliftment of all the souls of this world, and we want to connect with that living spiritual current. We don't want it to just be an exercise of our brain or mind. So we always want to read and hear under the guidance of the pure Bhakta. And our Gurudev embodies that to the extreme. So we're fortunate to have these recordings of our Gurudev chanting these verses. So last week we finished on verse number 15, I think. And we are on verse number... We're on verse number 14. Jai Shri Gurudev Ki Jai. So we are on verse number 14. Okay, so I'm going to play this recording of our Gurudev chanting. So I'm just going to play the verses up to where we were.
Karma Yoga Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chit Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tatking Karmani Nikhore Manganiyo Jayasi Kesava Vyamisrena Bhakchena Buddhi Mohaya Shiva Me Tadekang Badanischita Jena Sreyo Hamapnuyam Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmini Dividha Nishtha Pura Prokta Maya Nagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam Na Karmana Manarambhan Naiskalmam Purushosnute Na Cha Sannasana Deva Siddhing Samadhigacchati Na Hi Kaschit Karmapi Yatu Trishthatta Karma Krit Karyate Chavasa Karma Sarva Prakriti Joil Kunai Karmendriyani Sangjamma Jaste Manasa Smaran Indriyarthan Vimurhatma Mitthachara Sauchyate.
Oh, good. Nice.
Justindriyani Manasa Niyamya Aravati Rijuna Karmendriyai Karma Yoga Vasakta Sabhisishate Niyatang Kudu Karmatvam Karma Jayuchha Karmana Sarira Yatra Pichate Na Prasiddhe Da Karmana Jajjathat Karmano Natra Lokoyam Karma Bandhana.
So 3:10. Chapter 3, verse 10.
Sahajagya Prajasrishtva Purovacha Prajapati Anena Prasavishaddham Mesa Bhustishta Kamadu Devan Bhavayatanena Te Deva Bhavayantuva Parasparang Bhavayanta Sriya Paramamapshata Istan Bhum Vivo Deva Dashante Jagga Bhavitaha Taidattana Pradayai Po Jo Bhukte Stenaiva Sha Jagga Sistashina Santu Muchante Sarva Kilmishai Bhunjate Te Tvahang Papa Ye Pajantyatma Karana.
Okay, so that's where we reached up to verse number 13. And just as a quick review from last week, this is the first, this is chapter 3, Karma Yoga. And actually Karma Yoga was also discussed in the previous chapter, chapter 2, but it is elaborated on in the third chapter. And one of the main verses, which is, describing the principles of Karma Yoga, we discussed last week. That's verse number 9. Yagnartat karmano nyacha lokoyam karma bandhana tadartam karma kunteya mukta sangha samachara. And this is a nice verse to memorize if one has such a propensity. And it is a wonderful verse to try to remember and live by in our daily lives. And it is also one of those fundamental verses which describe the very nature of this reality, how this world is working, and it's very sobering to remember this. Basically, that everything that we do that is for our own self and not for the sake of the center of our supreme source and ultimately the Supreme Lord, whatever we do, in other words, that has selfish intent, whether good or bad, whether apparently good or apparently bad, that will bind us in karma, that will bind us in the reactions of this worldly plane. So it's, if we think of like all the 1,000,001 things that we do and say and endeavor for throughout the day, every day, day after day, so many foods that we eat, or movies that we watch, or Facebook pages that we visit, or the job that we go to, the people that we speak to, or so many innumerable things that we don't even think about, but how much they're based on selfish intent. They're all binding us within this world. They're all binding us within the reactions of this worldly plane. So it is a very sobering thing to think about, and reminding us that ultimately we want to try to strive for our higher purpose in life, and ultimately that means to become a giver, a contributor, a loving contributor to the center. So we're trying to guide our consciousness and our whole mode of living in that direction. And of course, this doesn't mean that we will necessarily change any of our external activities. It may all stay exactly the same, everything that we're doing, the work that we're doing, the food that we're eating, the people that we're meeting, everything may remain exactly the same. However, that internal consciousness will be completely revolutionized. And that will completely transform our future, our destination. But again, that in itself is a goal. That in itself is the result, if we have some higher understanding. Just to live in a selfish state of consciousness, that is a punishment, really. For higher-minded persons can appreciate this. To live in a state of goodness, purity, in the mode of giving, that is the most wonderful thing. Just to live in such a beautiful consciousness, that is the ultimate reward. That is the most wonderful thing. And then to feel, the reciprocation. We're giving to that higher plane, and we're feeling the reciprocation from that plane. What beauty, what joy, what love will we experience within our hearts? We can only guess, we can only begin to imagine. But we're trying at least to remind ourselves of these higher principles day by day. Okay, so now we're going to hear Srila Gurudev chant verse number 14, and then we're all going to repeat together.
Annad bhavanti bhutani vachannad anna sambhava yajnad bhavati parjannu yajna karma samudbhava. Okay,
so we're going to chant together. Anad bhavanti bhutani parjanyad anasambhava yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagya karma samudbhava. Okay, Sachi Didi, you want to start?
Okay. The living beings' bodies are manifest from food. Food is manifest due to rain. Rainfall ensues from the performance of sacrifice. And action is the cause of sacrifice.
Okay, so now we'll hear verse number 15.
Karma brahmhodu bhavang vidhi brahmakhar samudu bhavam tasmad sarvagatang brahma nityang yagye pradishchitam.
Okay, we'll chant together. Karma brahmod bhavam vidhi Brahmakada samudbhavam tasmat sarva gatam brahma nityam yagye pratishtitam. Shamasundari Devi.
Action is prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas originate in Akshara, the imperishable. Therefore, the all-pervading, imperishable Lord is ever present within the acts of sacrifice offered to him.
Okay, number 16.
Evaṁ pravartitam chakram nanubattaya tihaja aghayurindriya rama mohaṁ partha savivati.
Okay, we'll chant together. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvarta yatihaya agayur indriyaramo mogam partha sajivati. Oh, your turn.
O Arjuna, one who does not respect this natural causal cycle lives a life of sin, enjoying the senses in vain.
So this is very nice, and this is like a very harmonious way of living within the world, and much of the Vedic culture is based on this. Srila Sridhar Maharaj describes the Varnashram system as sympathetic dealings with nature. So, much of the whole Vedic system culture, it's based on this, living in harmony within the environment and within, with ourselves and with our co-members of this world. And so there's this, we find this deep consciousness and awareness of the natural cycle of things, and honoring and respecting and living in accordance with the nature of those cycles. But then, as it's pointed out in the, so it's saying, one who doesn't respect this cycle, that is a sinful life. Everything has some particular source, everything has some particular origin, and we're using those things for our own sustenance and our own enjoyment. So if we're not honoring how and where these have come from, then that is sinful. However, then as we're told in the next verse, someone who is attending to their higher duty, attending to the duty of their spiritual self, they don't have to worry about this. They don't have to worry. There's the absolute duty, and then there's the relative duty. For one who's living within the relativity of this world, it is important that they are honoring these natural cycles. Otherwise, they will have to pay some reaction. But for one who's attending to their higher duty, to that absolute duty, they are excused from any lower duty. And so the Govardhan Leela is a very beautiful example of this. When Lord Krishna holds the Govardhan hill with the pinky of his left hand, and the Brajabasis, they have their natural system, right? As it's describing here, the food is coming from the rain, and so there's this whole cycle. Their livelihood is based on dairy products. The dairy comes from the cow. The cows depend on grass. The grass comes from the rain. And Lord Indra, he's the presiding deity of rain. So they're living in harmony with this natural cycle of things, and they're offering special worship and presenting different offerings to Lord Indra every year to keep him happy. They're honoring his contribution in the way that their life is carrying on. But then Krishna, he wants to bring them to some higher conception, actually your connection is with me. I am the center, I am the absolute. Therefore, if you are involved with me, if you're serving me, you don't have to worry about all of these other duties. You're watering the roots of the tree. You're serving the very source. Then you don't have to worry about attending to so many secondary duties. That same principle is seen in that pastime. And there's also that famous verse in the Bhagavatam, Devarshi Bhutapta Ninam Pritrinam, stating that every soul within this world, they have some basic duties, obligations, debts. They have debt to the devas, they have debt to their ancestors, they have debts to the ancient rishis who have given us the Vedic literature, they have debt to the rest of mankind, like that. And in different ways they will absolve themselves of that, of those debts, to the ancestors, to the parents. They pay the debt through children, and like that. But then we are told, but for one who is attending to their higher duty, which is a servant of the Supreme Lord, to their central absolute duty, they are absolved, they are excused from those debts. In the beginning, there may be some disturbance if one takes that step to attend to that higher call. But as we see that in the Govardhan pastime also. Indra becomes very angry and he terrorizes the inhabitants of Vrindavan with, storm, thunder, lightning for 7 days, 7 nights. But ultimately, they are attentive to taking shelter of Krishna, and Krishna protects them, and Indra learns his lesson. So in the same way, when we take that step to move towards the call of our higher duty, then there may be some disturbance within this plane, there may be some reaction. But if we are careful to follow Krishna, follow that higher call, then we will have the strength to overcome that, to face that, and we will feel the bright result eventually. Okay. So, I'm giving I'm talking about this in terms of bhakti. That's not literally what's being described here. This is more like karma gyam. But we see our gurus, they're always extracting bhakti from every section of the Gita. So, okay, so verse number 17.
Jastvātmarasireva sāt ātmatriptascha mānavah ātmanneva ca santushtas tasya kāryagna vidyate.
Okay, 17, we'll chant all together. Yas tvatma ratir eva syad atmatriptascha mānavah atmanyeva cha santushtas tasya karyam na vidyate. Radha Prabhu, you want to read the translation, verse 17?
Yet there is no duty to fulfill for the realized person who delights within the self, being fully satisfied within. His only worldly action or karma is as required for his subsistence.
So actually, I was interpreting this in terms of bhakti, but you don't even have to go to bhakti, even on the more gyan level, one who is not engaging with the they're not engaging with the karmic reactions, they're not acting on the basis of their individual ego, they're not acting for their own individual separate enjoyment, then they're not incurring reactions, and so there's no need for them to live in consciousness of all of the different obligations and duties within this plane. So even for that person, so what to speak of the bhakta, what to speak of the devotee, the Vaishnav? That is an infinitely higher plane. Do you want to make any comment, Gadadhar?
No.
Okay, so we'll go to verse number 18. This is the thing, we're being told here, just one who has touch of the soul plane, they're satisfied within their own self. They don't need anything of this world. This is so inspiring, This is not our ultimate aspiration, but it really gives us some perspective, a higher way of existence, that we don't need these things. All of these things that we're so dependent on, that are feeding our mind, our body, our senses, we don't need them at all. They're just like obstructions. They're just taking us far away from the soul plane, which is more than enough to satisfy us. If we could just get a touch of that, that in itself is so satisfying. What to speak of this higher attainment of devotion that our gurus are giving us.
But that's only when we realize that this plane is full of suffering, that we, in all these actions that we do with our body and mind and our egoistic tendencies, they are full of suffering. And that we see in this world is full of suffering. But the Vedas and the teachers from the higher plane, they come for all of us to teach us, you are not your body, you are not your mind, you are not even your intelligence, but you are a soul. You are connected with the Supreme Soul. And that is where you get free from all these entanglements, what you first have in the first place, choice, to be free, to do whatever you want in the material plane, enjoy. But then we all see, at a certain point, you get exhausted. That this plane is this selfish plane without God realization is a suffering plane. And then we make the shift from an egoistic person to a theistic person. Where is it all coming from? And I need that connection. And then it starts. Then we can. Then that is so wonderful to have that connection with our Lord. What is our innate nature, and then we serve, we love, we learn about the scriptures which are so beautiful, and then our soul gets wakened up and get nutrition, and then we don't need all these things in the material world. We see it as, as matter. Matter is always something that transfers, and then it turns into the opposite also. We've seen that with want love, but the love is actually with our Lord. And then we get out of this plane of suffering and entanglement and prejudice and acquiring things for ourselves. And that is the freedom of the soul. That is the freedom of all of us in this world, when we are ready to go for it.
Okay, so we'll go to verse number 18. Okay, chant together. Naiva tasya krite narto na krite neha kaschana na chasya sarvabhuteshu kaschid arta vyapashraya. Ramananda.
In the world, he neither gains by action nor loses by inaction. He does not depend on any other being, from Lord Brahma down to the simplest life form, for any purpose.
karma samachara araktochacharam karma paramapnoti purusha.
Tasmad Shakta Satatam Karyam Karma Samachara Ashakto Hyacharan Karma Padam Apnoti Purusha. You read verse 19.
So perform your prescribed duties without attachment. By selflessly executing one's duties, a person attains liberation. True liberation is the state of pure devotion, attained in the maturity of selfless action.
So this is the essence of karma yoga right here. Not that one needs to renounce action, but one should renounce that attachment. It is that inner mood of selfishness and attachment which is binding us, not the activity itself.
Karmanaiva hi samsiddhi masita janakadaya lokasangrahamevapi sampashyan kartumarhasi.
Karma naiva hi samsiddhim ashtita janakadaya loka sangrahamevapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. King Janak and other learned personalities succeeded in attaining devotion through the execution of their prescribed duties. So it is fitting that you fulfill your duty in consideration of the welfare of the people. So, even if you don't actually need to do your duty, you should do it as an example to others who do need to do it. And that is it, expressed more clearly in the next verse.
Jajjadacharati srestha saptadevi tarujana chayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate.
Yad yadacharati shreshtas tattadeve tarojana sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate.
The masses follow the ways of great men, following the standards they set.
Does anyone recognize that verse? I know Gadadhar does. Shyamasundari, tell us. You recognize that verse?
Yeah, I've heard it before. That our gurus have spoken about.
In what context? Does anyone remember?
It was Guru Maharaj coming to the lotus feet of Siddhanta Saraswati. Was quoted by Siddhanta Saraswati.
Yes. Because Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he came from such our Param Gurudev, our grandfather Guru Srila Sridhar Maharaj here, he was the founder of this mission. He came from a very high level Brahmin family. He grew up speaking Sanskrit in his household. Very educated, very cultured, very knowledgeable, and so he came when he came to take shelter within the mission of his Guru Maharaj, the Gaudiya Math. You maybe heard of the Gaudiya Math. Srila Saraswati Thakur, he's the founder of that. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj when he came to take initiation, then at that time Srila Saraswati Thakur, he chanted this verse. He was very pleased because he thought, you're coming from such, and actually Srila Saraswati Thakur himself, he came from the Kayasta caste. He came from a lower caste. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj, coming from such a high family background, Saraswati Thakur, he, of course, in the ultimate consideration, it does not matter, but Srila Saraswati Thakur was pleased because it would really give so much prestige and dignity to the mission, and it would, people would pay attention, especially the higher class cultured people. It would make them take this more seriously, that someone of the standing of Srila Sridhar Maharaj was coming to join this mission. So we're told he chanted this verse at that time. Okay. So verse number 20.
Can I ask you something? So it says the masses, and in this regard what you say, it's only at a certain point we don't speak about masses. It's like a select group who's coming to receive this knowledge and wants to live by it. So why they say here the masses? Is that more in a general way?
Yeah, sure. That's how I understand it. It's and also many persons, maybe they're not going to come to join the mission or follow the teachings, but they'll get some natural respect, for this, like for example, like Radhanath Swami, you know, like he's someone who's bringing a lot of attention to Krishna consciousness, right? Because he's like, you know, he's a dignified person, and he's representing, you know, the spiritual mission of ISKCON and his Guru Maharaj, and he's bringing attention, and many people are getting respect for these teachings just because they know him, because they see him as a dignified, you know, admirable person. Then they're getting some appreciation for these teachings. Maybe they're not going to necessarily like join the temple and shave their heads, but they're getting some good impression, and that is a starting point. We saw that with our Gurudev. Oh.
But I think this is more specific, because they say the masses follow the ways of great men and following the standards they set. So it's actually already on a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
But in a general way, it's more.
I mean, what is this word masses? We could also say within our own mission, there's a mass, the general group, and then there are those who are practicing on a higher level and setting an example. We could, when masses doesn't need to be the 8 billion persons of the world, right?
I thought like that.
I mean, maybe you could interpret it like that, and I'm sure we can see some connotation there. But also, I mean, I see within like a smaller scale of our own mission, you know, of the mission example. Everyone's looking to them. If the leaders of the mission aren't following the standards, then who's going to follow them? Who's going to take them seriously, right?
There's one son dedicated to the Lord, then you have one son.
Sorry, Diane.
So everything, when it gets spiritual, even though it's big, it is calculated to one. Or when it is spiritual, that is what is substantial. The rest is not substantial. But I mean to say, then the masses, also when it is one person, then already the masses of all the spirit of the people who are spiritually following, that is already a mass then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Actually, I'm looking at the Sanskrit. It's not masses. It's lok, means people. Just means like, you know, other persons of a lower standing. Janaha and loka, you know, just means like other people.
I think there's some verse saying that out of thousands of people who are aspiring for spiritual enlightenment, once come to some higher realization. Out of thousands of those who come to higher realization, only once. Yeah, and you get this like filtering system,
yes,
like closer and closer and closer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's in Mahaprabhu's teachings to Srila Rupa Goswami. And there's also a verse like that here. I can't remember which chapter. And yes. Anyone else have a comment?
I was going to say that the principle outlined in this sloka is applicable on multiple levels. So even on a material level, where a celebrity wears a type of clothing or behaves in a certain way, and suddenly millions and millions of their fans are doing the same thing around the world. For example, when David Beckham, the footballer, started getting tattoos on his arms, now like some 1/3 of English men have tattooed arms.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
because of that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying all of them have tattoos, but that was a trend that was set. So the greatness is relative. The greatness expressed in the sloka. It could be a spiritual greatness, or it could be a greatness by material.
You're right. The verse is speaking in a very general way. Yeah. Well, you articulated that so nicely. Yeah, it's just expressing it as like a general principle of life and the world. Okay. Is everyone satisfied?
I have one point to make.
Yes.
No, I don't know much about this, but you know, I read this following the previous line.
Mm-hmm.
So it says the previous line is, it says, fitting that you will fulfill your duty in consideration of the welfare of the people.
Mm.
And then it's about the people.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, the whole thing has to be put in the context why this is being spoken to Arjuna.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a feeling that it's a motive.
Yeah, that's nice that you say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, let's move on.
Nami patthasti kartavyam
So 22.
trishu lokeshu kinchana nana bhaktam avaptavyam bhatta eva chakarmani.
Name partashti kartavyam chishu lokeshu kinchana nana vaptam avaptavyam varta eva chakarmani. I think it's your turn, Shamasundri.
O Arjuna, I have no duty in the three worlds. I lack nothing, and there is nothing to be attained by me. And yet, I myself am active.
Okay. So, following on what Dinesh was saying, Krishna is saying, like, even if you don't actually need to perform your duty, you should do it just as an example for others. Like in my own case, I don't need to do any duty, I'm God, but I do it just to set an example for others, because it will not be good for others if they don't follow their duty. Or Gurudev mentioned that about Srila Sridhar Maharaj.
Example will give up their duties.
Sideyurime loka na kurchang karma chiraham sankarasya chakatasam upahanyami mang praja.
Utsi deyorime loka na kuryam karma chedaham sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyam ima.
If I do not engage in duty, the people of this world, of these worlds, will renounce their duties and fall to ruination. Thus I will.
Okay.
Sattah karmanna vidvansu yatha kurbanti bharat kuryad vidvans tatha sakta chikinshu loka sangraham.
So yata kurvanti bhadata kuryad vidvams tata shaktash chikyashur.
The wise too must work, but without attachment, in order to guide the general people who exist in the plane of worldly action. They differ not in their work, but in their attitudes of attachment and detachment.
And I have a note here, I think this must be from commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that action should be done even by persons established in Gyan, even persons who have actually transcended the plane of action, they're established in spiritual knowledge, they should also perform their duties for the sake of others. Internally, it's actually a completely different thing. They're on two completely different, standing on two completely different places in terms of their consciousness. But for the sake of the common persons, they should continue. Example of selflessness in fulfilling duties, thus encouraging the ignorant in the performance of their prescribed duties. And we do meet persons like that sometimes. They're more from like a lazy mentality. They want to leave behind their worldly duties, and supposedly for sake of spiritual culture, but really because they don't want to take care of their responsibilities. Okay.
प्रकृति क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहंकार विमूढ़ात्मा कर्ताहमिति मन्यते.
Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankar vimudatma kartaham iti manyate.
All actions in the world are in every respect affected by the modes of material nature, which impel the senses. But a man deluded by bodily identification thinks, I alone am accomplishing this work.
So this is the effect of the ahankar, the false ego. It causes us to think of ourselves as the doer. You know, I am the doer, and therefore all the results of all these things that I'm doing, they belong to me. But actually, everything that's taking place in this world, including our own bodily functions, they're dependent on so many higher forces of nature. You know? And so many things that we acquire or we think are ours, they're actually like practically nothing to do with us. As Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he expresses in one of his songs very nicely, the only thing that we can do on our part is desire. We can will to do something. That's all that we can do as individuals. We can will to pick up a glass of water and to drink, you know. But whether that actually happens depends on so many, like within. Just think about it, like how many different things within our body are necessary to do this little thing. Like how many things in our brain are going off, and how many different muscles, and there's like so many different factors that are dependent on doing that, you know. But we're thinking, I'm doing this, you know, I'm so great. You know?
Also, the circumstances, would you be able to, would you have some water around?
Yeah, will you have water? Will your muscles be working? There's actually like an incredible number of factors that are allowing that little action, that your muscles are working, that there's water available, that your brain is functioning properly, that the law of gravity is working. Like there's so many different things. That you can swallow the water, you know, that your esophagus is working properly. There's like so many different factors. But it is the ahankar that deludes us and makes us think of ourselves as the doer. All we can do is will. We can desire. Whether anything actually happens, whether our business is successful, whether our flowers grow, you know, so on and so forth. It's not dependent on us, you know. And this is one of the good things when we have some accident or some type of incapacity or failure. It really gives us pause for reflection, you know, and to realize how helpless we actually are. You know, we can will, we can desire, we can try, but the results, they're not dependent on us, and therefore we should not be so attached to them and think that we own them.
So it's partially predestined by our previous activities. And,
that's true.
Yeah, and to realize that you have to get out of the way. To get out of the way of all this thinking that you think, that you do, or that you want, or that you have an opinion of, that you can surrender and that you can let it all go through. That you know it's all done by the Lord actually. And to feel that you are meant to be an agent or an instrument of the Lord, and you want to work for Him, and that you have to get out of the way with your ahankar and your mind, who is thinking and thinking about so many things about them yourself. But to see that everything is the creation of the Lord to begin with. Our body is His creation. We don't even know how it works. And He is working through all of that already. But we just have to get out of the way.
Connect with that higher will. You know, that we've set aside our own, you know, concocted will, which is not coming from our intrinsic self, and to align ourselves, as you said so nicely, to be an instrument of that that higher flow and higher will. It's all dependent on him anyway, right?
Anyway.
So we may as well connect with the direct rather than the indirect.
And they say also all these desires that we have, so many desires, they block that flow of the flow that's coming from above through everybody, because we are part of that. But we have so many desires, and that is blocking our realization actually that we are spiritual identification, we are spiritual identification.
Well, I think maybe it's a good place to stop. Does anyone have any final comment or question or anything at all?
Can I just ask, like, how is it that the modes of nature, like, are in charge of, like, the actions? Because here it says they impel the senses. But I don't know, what does that mean?
Well, goodness, passion, ignorance, they're all stimulating different things within us, right? You know, like I would say the mode of passion is exciting hunger, or you know, angry expression, or things like that. I mean, I'm not able to speak about it in detail, but like that. Maybe Gadadhar can say something more about that.
Okay, well, the material nature is like an interplay of the three modes. So they're all existing in some kind of combination of the three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance, sattva, rajas, tamas. Sometimes pure, not necessarily, not often pure, often a mix, generally a mix. And the nature of that mix is going to be reflected in a person's actions, depending on the state that they're living in. So like Vishakha was saying, rajas will incite to anger, to lust, to greed. Sattva to tranquility, equilibrium, to higher thoughts, higher inspiration. And tamas to excessive sleep or lethargy, or self-harming activity, intoxication, etc. So there's a spectrum from, you could say, good to bad, and all human activity exists inside that spectrum. And inside that spectrum is prakriti, so they're the flavors of prakriti. And a person's so-called sense of free will is normally simply a programmed response to the environment that they're in, which includes their psychological environment. And the physical environment is often a reflection of that psychological environment. So their so-called sense of free will is very limited, and the response they make, and there's different degrees of limitation or freedom. So someone in Sattva-gun, their sense of will or desire their ability to express their will is greater than someone in Tamas. But nonetheless, it's still a product of their sattvic conditioning. So in that sense, everything is a response rather than an action. The modes project their flavor onto a person, and the person responds accordingly and creates an effect. And that, in turn, has a counter effect. So the person is like thrown around on an ocean of prakriti, of maya, with the delusion that they're having some kind of impact or some kind of progress through their sense of free will. Anyway, that's my little bit.
That was beautifully expressed. He's so articulate.
Yeah.
So often I'm like thinking something I don't have that power of articulation that I ask him.
You
He
have.
says it
Yeah, you have also.
perfectly.
I heard this example of that in this world everything which is surrounding us is the agent of influence. So everything we get in connection with, be it a sound, food, smell, taste, information, it's all agents of influences which partially changes our understanding, sense of self, desires. So by being surrounded by agents of influences which are tamasic, like intoxications, like meat, gambling, all these things, and it gives us the side effect that the person's desires and thoughts change. So we, by placing ourselves in surrounded by different agents of influences, we change our inner feelings and attitude to what is surrounding us. So yeah, something like that.
Very nice.
It's very interesting because it means that really we don't control any of it. Like we're very, like it's very important to be in a good environment with good association, because otherwise we're just
you
lost.
end up in the wrong association, and then in a few years' time you'll be surprised how your thinking changes, and like how you look at things. Because our character is like it's a combination of different characters we met and things we perceive. You know, like you take a needle and neat suit, right? But out of the, how do you call those things? Threads, yes. And so our character is like a lot of different threads together. So by being around nice people, you can end up having a more or less such a character.
And they say also like the mode of ignorance is not good for yourself and not good for anybody else, your surrounding. Then the mode of passion is good for yourself but not for the others. And the mode of goodness is good for yourself and also for the others. But if you understand that this is the whole plane of misconception, then you have to get out and, you know, offer yourself in service and dedication to the Lord, because you understand this whole plane is false to begin with. And you know, so all these modes of nature are also not the ultimate destination where we have to give ourselves to get purified and come in our natural state.
Shuddha Sattva.
Yes.
And it said that there was originally a little spark of free will, a minute amount of free will from the original place, like the Brahmajyoti. And that through that free will, from that clean slate of consciousness, free will, we come to a place where something like a spider's web. So once we choose the Mayic domain, then the free will is very soon lost in a web of ever-increasing karmic complexity, to the point where we're just tossed around as a result of stimulus, responding to stimulus and creating further effects in a cycle of action and reaction. And that the only way out of it is to surrender that free will, surrender that will to the Lord, abandon that attempt at enjoyment through a expression of will which is digging the hole deeper. Hence the term Pushti Marg, where it's the path of mercy. It's not a path of self-actualization, but rather one of abandoning the free will and inviting the mercy of the Lord, which is thus called causeless, because it's not a result of any endeavor that one performs.
And like the cause of that entanglement is desires, right? Because we have to do some action. We cannot sit still. So by having all these desires, then we get the entanglement in all these situations, and that is, you know, there we have to get our track back to, you know, purification and seeing what is what, and we have learned it from our masters, from the ancient, from that spiritual plane. They have come to us to teach us. You don't have to suffer. This is not your a gentle way of living. This is an egoistic way of living. This will not suit you well.
Okay. Well, we'll stop there unless anyone else wants to add anything. Question?
Maybe you want to say something or some realizations?
No, nothing to say. Just listen.
We're very happy you came
Yeah.
to
Oh, thank
join
you.
us. Such a distinguished visitor.
My goodness. Yeah, don't
You,
even know
no,
me
you
yet.
you look very pious, very auspicious.
No.
You can tell just by looking at people's faces.
No. I'm not very pious.
Well, your samskar definitely is.
No.
Okay, well, we normally sing Hari Harayama Krishna, page 60 in the songbook. Sunday, you want to sing? Or you have to run?
Sure. No, it's fine.
Danga also.
Come to play.
Oh, are you the player?
I don't mind. You
Play,
play.
I'll play the part.
I don't know who's the more player.
No, I don't know either.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Hari Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Namaha. Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Ki Jai Ki
Jai.
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Shila Bhakti Nirmala